You should be grateful you were invited, my mother's words cut deeper than any knife. Standing there in my wine-minus-colored dress, holding the place card that read Table H. Marlborough, I realized I'd spent my entire life trying to belong in a family that never wanted me. Today at my sister's wedding, everything changed. Not because they finally accepted me, but because I finally accepted the truth. My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I stopped being invisible. I arrived at my sister Ellie's wedding with butterflies in my stomach. The lakeside resort in Vermont was stunning, with gardens bursting with flowers and a grand hall topped with sparkling chandeliers. I smoothed down my wine-minus-colored dress as the valet opened my car door. Just smile and be supportive, I whispered to myself. This was Ellie's day, not mine. I'd always known my place in the family hierarchy. The receptionist greeted me with a brilliant smile as I approached the check-in table. Your name? She asked pleasantly. Mary Evans, I replied softly. Her smile faltered slightly as she flipped through her list, her perfectly manicured finger moving faster than necessary. Here it is, she finally said, her voice tighter than before. You're placed in the hallway area. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Sorry, where? Just outside the banquet hall, near the coat my newest yak. My heart sank as I glanced at the seating chart beside us. My parents were at the head table. Ellie's college friends had prime spots under the crystal chandeliers. Even her husband's co-workers were seated at beautifully decorated tables inside. But me, her only sister, I was relegated to the hallway. Maybe there's been a mistake, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. The receptionist's smile grew strained. I'm afraid not. This is the assigned spot. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I scanned the room and spotted my mother adjusting Ellie's veil, both of them laughing as if nothing was wrong. I walked over, my legs feeling strangely hollow. Mom, can I talk to you for a second? My mother, Caroline, didn't even look at me. Not now, Mary. Can't you see we're busy? Just a minute, I insisted, my voice quiet but firm. She sighed dramatically and stepped aside, leaving Ellie standing there with that smug half-fuel I knew too well. I've been seated in the hallway, I said simply. My mother shrugged as if I'd mentioned a minor inconvenience, like a slightly uncomfortable chair. We had to prioritize close family, you know that. The words hit me like a slap. I am close family. She let out a soft, cold laugh that I'd heard too many times before. Oh, don't make a big deal out of this, Mary. Ellie chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic. But her eyes told a different story. They gleamed with satisfaction, watching me squirm. I turned back to my mother, hoping for even a flicker of sympathy. Instead, she sighed again, longer this time. Don't ruin your sister's big day, Mary. You should be grateful you were invited. Grateful? The word lodged in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be treated like a stranger at my own sister's wedding. Grateful to be seated by the coat check while distant relatives got prime spots. My father approached, his voice low and non-committal as always. It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it a thing. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Not dramatically, not with a bang or tears. Just a quiet realization that I'd spent my entire life accepting scraps from my own family's table. I smiled minus an empty smile that didn't reach my eyes without another word. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I walked out of the main hall. The hallway smelled of fresh flowers and something else minus something out of place. Like me. I turned the place card over in my hand, staring at the elegant cursive that spelled out my exclusion. Mary Evans. Table H. Hallway area. I'd hoped, just this once, that my family would see me as one of them. But clearly, they never had. The door opened behind me with a soft click. Mary, Ellie called, her voice light but her intention heavy. I turned slowly to face my sister in her perfect wedding gown, her veil floating around her like she was in a magazine photoshoot. Are you upset? She asked with mock concern. Because of the seating? I gave a dry laugh. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. Ellie tilted her head, her eyes lighting up with amusement. You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Mary. Who even cares? I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice level. You know it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way. She shrugged, the expensive lace of her dress catching the light. So, what? You still showed up, still wore the pretty dress, still hoped for attention. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. You're desperate for their approval. It's sad. I looked her straight in the eyes, seeing clearly for the first time. No, Ellie. What's sad is that you need to tear someone down just to feel loved. That made her pause, but only for a second. Then she laughed, the sound like breaking glass. You really know how to kill the mood, like always. I heard footsteps approaching. My mother appeared, her expression tense like she'd been dragged away from something important. I heard there's some drama out here, she said, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing my way. I took a deep breath. Mom, I was seated in the hallway. I'm not some acquaintance or distant guest. I'm your daughter. She furrowed her brow, then gave that tight smile I knew so well. Mary, it's not that I don't value you. It's just there were limited seats inside. I had to prioritize people who are closer. I stood frozen. What did you just say? Closer to Ellie, she said quickly. Aunt Patty, her best friend from college, the people who were there when she was sick. You've always been independent. I never had to worry about you. The laugh that escaped me was soft, almost sad. You never had to worry about me, and you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist? Ellie jumped in, her voice therapy sweet. Mary, stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited. There it was again. Grateful. I turned to my mother, looking at her like I was seeing a stranger. Do you even realize how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like an outsider in my own family? She said nothing. No touch. No hug. No apology. My father's deep voice came from my left. It's just a seat, Mary. He stood there, drink in hand, eyes fixed on the floor minus the same avoidance I'd seen my entire life. I don't need you to defend me, I said slowly. But the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak. He looked up briefly, confusion flickering across his face before fading back to indifference. Ellie shrugged, like I was a stubborn child ruining the adults' party. If you're that unhappy, you can just leave. I looked at the three of them, these people I'd spent my life trying to please, and suddenly realized maybe Ellie was right. Maybe I should leave. Not just the wedding, but the endless cycle of hoping for love from people who had none to give. I tightened my grip on my purse and took a deep breath. Something inside me shifted, not from weakness, but from clarity. I turned and walked away, my footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. Behind me, the wedding continued, music and laughter spilling out from the hall like I'd never existed. I found a quiet bench near a window, right beside the coat check Malklu where they'd planned for me to be. The memories came flooding back as I sat there alone. 3 years ago, Thanksgiving. Ellie was away in Portugal with a new boyfriend, and the house felt strangely peaceful. My mother had asked me to find some old family photos for an album. In my childhood bedroom, while searching through drawers, my eyes landed on my mother's vanity. I don't know why I opened that small drawer. Inside was a leather mulch-bound notebook filled with my mother's careful handwriting. Page after page of memories. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten, she didn't cry. She turned around, waved goodbye to me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be scared of thunder, but now she's much braver. I flipped through every page, searching desperately for my name. Not a sentence. Not a word. Nothing. When my mother walked in, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the notebook open in my hands. You wrote all of this about Ellie, I said, my voice small. She glanced at it and smiled lightly. I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. She's sensitive. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. And what about me? She looked at me, her eyes unwavering. You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered. I nodded, saying nothing more. But something inside me shattered that day. Sitting in the hallway of my sister's wedding, that memory felt fresh again. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary, the daughter my mother never thought to include in her memory book. The sister who didn't deserve a seat at the wedding. Mary? A low male voice startled me from my thoughts. I looked up to see Ethan Bennett, the groom, standing before me. His tie was slightly loosened, his dark hair tousled as if he'd been running his fingers through it. Ethan, I acknowledged, smoothing my dress as I stood. He looked at me with narrowed eyes. Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel right. I let out a soft laugh. Really? Because your family decided I'm not worthy of a seat in the main hall. He said nothing for a moment, then asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" I met his gaze. Go ahead. He hesitated, his hand tightening around his champagne glass. Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed off to you? I tilted my head. Are you asking if I've heard her badmouth you? Not just that. He pulled out his phone, looked at it, then shook his head. Lately, she's been different. Controlling. Secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know, and I'm starting to realize. Something's not right. I paused, thinking of all the cruel things Ellie had said about him when she thought no one important was listening. You might want to brace yourself, I said slowly. Because I don't think you really know who Ellie is. He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut in. And if you're still unsure, then maybe I can help make things clear. We both turned to see Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, standing at the end of the hallway holding a phone. She walked toward us with quiet dignity and handed the phone to her son. Look. I watched as Ethan's expression changed from confusion to shock to something deeper as he scrolled through whatever was on the screen. His voice cracked. She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband. Said I was too predictable, and as long as she stayed sweet in front of my family, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded. There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie said that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you dependent. And then, everything will be mine. That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan, his face pale, his shoulders tense. I can't believe this, he whispered. Mom, why do you have these messages? Celeste glanced at me, then answered, a friend of mine works at the studio where Ellie hired her stylist. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting, and I. Read it. Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone. The air around us felt frozen. I sat beside him, saying nothing. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew this was the moment when buried truths finally came to light. Celeste stood there silently for a few seconds, then said gently, Mary, thank you for not turning away. I gave a small nod. I didn't need thanks. I just wanted the truth to stop being buried. An hour later, we all sat in a private conference room. The air felt heavy with unspoken words. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his eyes blank. Celeste stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. I sat slightly to the right, hands folded in my lap. The door opened. Ellie walked in with my mother. Mom looked confused, but Ellie maintained her usual air of confidence, though there was now a flicker of caution in her eyes. What's going on? She asked, her voice slightly higher than normal. Why are you pulling people out of the wedding? Ethan stood up and placed a white envelope on the table. You know what this is. Ellie stared at the envelope, saying nothing. Petition to annul the marriage, he said, his voice unwavering. And in case you care, I've already signed it. The room fell silent. My mother gasped. Ellie stepped back. You're joking, right? Celeste spoke up, her voice sharp as a blade. We read all of your messages, Ellie. Every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. I didn't. Don't. Ethan cut her off, his voice carrying both hurt and fury. You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have it all under control 6 months after the wedding. You called me too easy to manipulate. Just pretend to be fragile and you get anything you want. Want me to quote more? Ellie froze. I looked at my mother. She stood still, her face pale, as if seeing her daughter's true self for the first time. Those were jokes, Ellie said hoarsely. Messages between friends. Not serious. Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. And the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke too? My father entered the room then, his expression heavy. Is this true? He asked Ellie directly. When she didn't respond, he turned to my mother. Did you know about this? Mom shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do something like this. You never think, he said slowly. You've never looked at what's really going on. Then he turned toward me. And for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. Mary, he said. I'm sorry. Both Mom and I were stunned. I've been silent for too long, he continued. Let everything veer off course. And I know you were right about Ellie. About everything. Ellie snapped. You're taking her side, she shouted. Your daughter, the one you've always loved, is being turned on by her entire family over a few dumb texts? Ethan gripped the edge of the table. Don't call them dumb texts, Ellie. That's who you really are. You don't understand, Ellie shouted, her voice trembling. I love you. I just didn't want to lose the chance to build a stable life. What's wrong with that? Celeste raised an eyebrow. Is that what love looks like? Planning a divorce before the wedding even starts? She's lying, Ellie spun toward me, her eyes burning. This is all your fault. If you weren't so jealous, if you didn't poison Mom against me, today wouldn't be ruined. I took a deep breath, staying calm. Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family, Ellie screamed. Always pretending to be the good one just to make Mom feel guilty. What do you want? To steal everything from me? No, I said, my voice quiet but clear. I just want the truth to be seen. My mother stepped forward then. She looked at Ellie for a long time, confused, hurt, and finally broken. Ellie, she said softly, I can't defend you anymore. Ellie stood frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of being caught. Fear because she realized no one was standing by her this time. What happened next became the moment everyone at the wedding would remember forever. Ellie charged out of the conference room and burst into the reception hall, where guests were still dining and celebrating. Her carefully applied makeup was now smudged around her eyes. Her pristine white wedding gown that had wowed everyone hours ago now looked burdensome, stripped of its elegance. You think you can humiliate me like this? She screamed, her voice echoing through the rows of banquet tables. The music stopped. Heads turned. A murmur rose through the crowd. Ethan, Celeste, my parents, and I had followed her into the hall, standing silently as Ellie's public meltdown unfolded. I gave everything for today, she continued. Months of planning, picking out every single detail, and now over a few messages, a few meaningless words, you're going to destroy me? Ethan stepped forward, his gaze steady. No one destroyed you, Ellie. You did that yourself. She shook her head wildly, tears spilling down her cheeks. You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future. Celeste moved forward, her voice chillingly calm. I once hoped you'd be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only wanted what we had. A quieto rippled through the crowd. She made all of this up, Ellie shouted, pointing directly at me. Mary's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. She spent her whole life in the background, and now she wants to pull me down with her. I stepped forward, calm and steady. I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight. Ellie went silent. Then she turned to Ethan, clinging to a final shred of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows. Ethan held up the white envelope. This is the annulment contract. And I signed it. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Let's go, Ethan. As they walked away, Ellie stood alone in the center of the reception hall, surrounded by shocked guests and abandoned celebration. She had once been the star, the center of attention. Now it had all crumbled before everyone's eyes. A week later, I sat by the Charles River in Boston, watching the sunset reflect off the water. My phone buzzed with the 9th call from my mother in 3 days. I didn't answer. I'd heard enough for a lifetime. I pulled out an old family photo from my wall, a take Christmas picture from when I was 16. Ellie stood in the center wearing a bright red dress, grinning ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, hand resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder. And me? I stood off to the side, half mouth hidden behind the Christmas tree. I stared at the photo for a long time, then gently folded it, then tucked it away. I no longer needed to force myself into a frame I was never meant to fit. My phone rang again. This time, it was my father. I picked up, not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it mattered. Mary, he said, his voice rougher than usual. I'm not good with words. You know that. I didn't answer. I just listened. But that day, when you spoke, and your mother saw who Ellie really was, I think for the first time in her life, she understood how alone you've been. A long pause followed. Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything. But I want you to know. I closed my eyes. No tears. No pain. Just a quiet sense of peace. Thank you, Dad, I said softly. But I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom. That night, I went home and pulled out the family photo album. I didn't burn it. I didn't tear it up. I just placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended. And I didn't need to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine, a trip I'd always wanted to take, but never let myself because of family gatherings or other invisible obligations. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. because now I knew my worth doesn't come from someone else's gaze. It comes from how I see myself. Family might be where we come from, but it's not always where we belong. Real family is made of those who respect you, listen to you, and don't make you fight just to be seen. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, but to find yourself.